Hello, everyone. In this lecture, I will be talking about human-centered AI. All right. I will be specifically like focusing on the data collection or process in human-centered AI projects, and also I will talk about the evaluation of human-centered AI systems, right? So these processes are very important, very critical when it comes to designing and developing user-centric AI system, right? So, generally speaking, when you're talking about or designing um, an AI model or an AI system, right? The data pipeline process is very important, right? Because every AI systems, right, we need a model, right? So that will be integrated with your AI system, right? Generally speaking. So what does this model do, right? So we know the AI models can make predictions, recommendations, and also um suggestions, summarization. It can do many things, right, for human users, right? But as we know, every AI system, it has a model, right? In general, a model behind, right? So this model is basically trained with a huge amount of data, depending on the type of the software system, or maybe the nature of the the business or context where your AI system is being used by the users or the customers, right? So for example, like if you're designing a small scale AI system and the AI model, you may need a good amount of like data, and using these data you train the model, and like you can deploy it, you can integrate with your front end user interface, right? So in that case, you may not need a huge set of data. But if you're talking about a machine learning model or like AI system for large enterprises, then you may need even like millions of records. For example, like if you're training a large language model or generative AI from scratch, definitely you will need like millions of our data, like billions of parameters and so on, right? It all depends, all right? But the question here is like, why data collection and the evaluation processes are important in human-centered AI, right? So in the previous videos, I have already talked about what do you mean by human-centered AI, user-centered AI, right? So the idea of like HCAI or like a user-centered AI is that, right, you are designing your AI systems for your target users, right? Your AI system or like your model may be very powerful. It can be technically very complex. It doesn't matter, right? In the end, who is going to use your system? The users, right? So which is why we need to think about our users. We need to understand our target users, like their needs, their pain points, and ultimately the question here is the AI that we are developing can really solve the user's problems or not, right? So if we want to design and develop an AI system that is user-centric, right? So to achieve this goal, what we can do, we have to make our AI development process to be user centric. In other words, we need to use a proper are like, well established, design framework, such as like design thinking or user-centered design, right? To guide our machine learning development process, or generative AI development process, or like ML ops, or like maybe AI development process, you name it, right? We need guidance, right? We need a framework, right, to make sure every task we do um in our project, AI project, is user centric, right? So that in the end we can make sure that the system we are developing is really useful and user friendly and usable for our target users, right? So which is why in this um lecture, I'm going to talk about the data collection process and also evaluation. Now, you may ask, why in data collection process it is important to be user-centric, right? So, generally speaking, every AI model, right, it has, it needs data, huge amount of data, because by using this large data set, right, the training data, we use it and we train the model, and model will understand the patterns, relationships, and so on by using very complex mathematical formulas and stuff. Then it can do like precise predictions. It can make recommendations. It can find, it can identify the errors, problems that human eyes really cannot see it, right? So to be able to do AI model itself without data may not be, useful. It will be just useless, right? So which is why when you're designing and developing a model, the data is the backbone, right? So without such useful data, you cannot really train the model, and also develop a model, and also cannot make, like, you cannot, your model, your system cannot make predictions, for example, right? And so in this lecture, like I will be going to talk about, like, how to gather high quality data since in the beginning of your AI development project. And I will talk like why quality data, high quality data, why do we need this? So I will elaborate more on this later in the lecture, right? And also, okay, now we are clear, right? We need data. But the question is like, where do we get? Where do we get them? It is not a small amount of data. We need huge data. We need more data set, right? More raw data. And the next one is how to document them, how to store them, how to keep them, and also how to manage, how to process such raw data to make sure that, we understand this data, and we can use such data properly and systematically to feed and train to the model that we are developing, so that the model later on it can produce quality research, right? Um, as you know, right, the data that you feed into the model, if it is not qualified enough, what will happen? So the output, right, may not be good enough. The concept of like garbage in type of problems. So which is why since in the beginning of the project, AI development project, we to gather and source the quality data, and especially for the like supervised learning, right? So generally speaking, we have like supervised learning, unsupervised learning in like machine learning or like AI development, right? But for supervised learning, we need to create labels to make sure that, like, our data set, they are like, clear, structure, organized and stuff. And like it can be fed into the model, train the model, and generate the result, right? So tuning process is very important as well. So these are the things that we are going to talk about in the lecture today. All right. So as I mentioned, data collection is like very important. Without data, your model cannot do anything, right? So the model will learn, right? We are kind of like teaching the AI model what to do, what to learn, right? So it is something equivalent to a teacher teaching a student, right? Or maybe in this case like a student, right? A teacher are like teaching the student. So the teacher was showing explaining the concepts in the first place, and the teacher will show a lot of examples or like problems to the students, and like learn from these examples, like these problems, right? So it is a training process, a learning process, right? The same thing for the AI model, right? So AI is learning, or like AI is being trained by the human being by using the existing data, the data that we have collected, right? So after this training process, learning process, the same thing for student and the teacher and the student, right? So after a training period, a student will face an exam, right? So in the exam, student will kind of like see the unseen, right? The question, but the student get already has the knowledge about the problem. So if he or she is being trained professionally and systematically, the student can actually take any question and produce or generate the answers that are like very accurate or like all correct, right? But in the case of AI, 100% accuracy is like still a challenge, right? But we expect our AI models to generate close enough result or the outputs, right? Accurate, reliable output, right? So which is why the training data, as I mentioned, is very important. It can be images, it can be textual information, it can be videos, it can be like the voice messages and so on, you name it, right? Depending on what type of project you're doing, so that the model can learn from the data, right? And also it will be able to make predictions later on, right? So the next question here is, when you're getting data, right? When you are collecting data, how are you going to collect the data, right? Are you going to collect data from existing sources, or like you are going to create your own data set from scratch, right? So it really depends. In some cases, you can rely on the existing data set, and like you clean it, organize it, and also like you pre-process it, and like do the feature engineering, like fine-tuning and so on, right? Then using such training data, you train the model, and the model will generate the outputs, right? That's right. You might need to collect data from scratch because your business use case is very unique and like very special. In that case, that you cannot really find the useful data set in the market, in the industry. In that case, you have to do it from scratch, right? So um in this case, right, here is the example here, right? So the idea here is like we are trying to create a mobile app here, right, that can classify different types of plants, right? It may be in North America, right, for example. So which is why, to be able to train the model, right, so this model will be later integrated into the your mobile application, right? But your mobile application will contain like front end interface and the back end, like the programming process. But we need a kind of like a pre-trained model, right? So to be able to do this, what we need here is we need to collect, different the images, you know, images of like, the plants and like, flowers and stuff, right? So we need to get like, as many images as possible. And these images should be like good enough, reusable, and also more importantly, in the context of human-centered AI, it must align with user needs, right? So later on, I will talk about this. So when you're kind of like, sourcing the data, how are you going to get them all these images, right? So right here, quite a few, but like in reality, you may need like thousands of images in like, even for one plant, one type of plant, you will need like, different types of images like, low resolution, high resolution, and the different lighting, different and so on, right? The background color. So they are all, important for the model to understand. Okay, even though there are like, many noises around, but the modern model can accurately identify, classify the plant, right? So if you're using like one image for one plant type, it may not work, right? Because your data source images are not diverse enough. So diversity is very important as well, right? So what we are going to do here is we need to collect, a lot of training data. We need to clean them. We need to organize them. And more importantly, we need to label them, right? Because for the supervised learning, otherwise the model cannot learn from it, right? So using the training data, we will tune into the model, train the model, do the tuning until we get our like expected result, right? And if we are like when we are satisfied with the result, like we can integrate the model with the interface, right? The application, right? Then we do the testing. User will input a new data that we never use in the right. We upload the new image, and like the model will like process it, and like it will output the accurate result, right? So the quality of output is very much related to the quality of data that you collected previously, and like how you train to the model. So they are very important, which is why the the data collection process here is the, I would say, a critical point of a critical stage of your machine learning pipeline or your AI development, because your model, your algorithm, your interface design, they may be very powerful, but if you use like low quality data, or like in the end, it will definitely impact on the quality of output, right? So which is why not to happen here. So this is kind of like very important here. So remember, we are focusing on user-centered AI, right? So why do we need our AI system to be user-centric, AI-centric? Because in the end, we are designing for our target users, and we want to solve their problems, which is why when you're doing your data pipeline, the machine learning pipeline, right? So first of all, you need to understand the real needs, right? The pain points of your users in the first place, right? So by understanding their needs and their requirements, and then what we can do is we can start like designing, organizing, collecting, managing data that will be used for the model to be trained, and this model will be later integrated into our system, and the system can generate the user-centric outputs, right? So without understanding user needs here, right, you may not have a good strategy how to collect the data, how to organize them, what kind of features you will need, you may not know it, and in the end, and consequently, the output that you produce may not be aligned with what users have expected, right? So which is why not to happen this, we need to transform from the user needs in the first place to the data needs later on. These data needs will be very much supportive to your data collection and data preprocessing task, and later on we can tune to the model, right? So it is like very important. Plan to gather high quality data from the start, right? High quality basically means like good data, enough data, diverse, responsible, and also like, organized data. They are very, very important. So as I mentioned, data is the backbone, and it is critical to any AI project, right? You may or may not be user centric, right? But if you're talking about user centric, it is essential to make sure like, you understand your user needs in the first place. Later on, you can transform user needs into the data needs, right? um most of the time, right, people, they may want to invest more time and effort into the model development because like they think it is more challenging, right? In reality, you should be investing like into the data collection process and also the like pre-processing task, as equally as the um model development. Because if you are not maintaining the quality of data, in other words, you are not collecting the quality data, in the end, right, your output may not be good enough, right? So when do you start, planning this since in the beginning of the project, which is why I have already mentioned, right? So user needs are very important. If you clearly understand what users need, what they want, then based on that, you can define your data needs, right? What kind of data that you're going to gather, how much do you need, and like what kind of features, variables, labels that you will need. It is very important, right? So if you don't do a good job in the like, in data collection part, it may impact on the downstream in the development life cycle, right? So as I mentioned, your predictions, recommendations, they all will be very bad, right? So data quality should not be overlooked in AI, because later data cascades negative effects from the poor data will be like, a problem. It will be problematic in your like AI development. For example, like previously I show you the example of like PlanPair, right? It's a like, the mobile based auto detection system like to the plans, right? But in the beginning of the project, we collected data from the like South America, and like plans available in like, seen in South America, right? And we mostly use such data set and the model. And the output here is like the model and the mobile application can only detect the plants in South American countries. It will not be in Africa or like, Southeast Asia or whatever, right? So this is, the problem that you overlook, right? You didn't think since in the beginning of the project, which is why your data set, like since, during the collection time, it should be diverse, it should be sufficient, it should be like, responsible, and so that like you will have a good quality data, right? Otherwise, right, you may limit releases to the supported areas. If you're using the data set from like South America, right, then your mobile should be restricted to the supported areas. Otherwise, the output quality may not be really great, right? It may not be accurate. So careful planning and evaluation help detect and fix problems early, improving the user experience, right? So, uh, if your AI system is not accurately making predictions, then users will get disappointed, right? So accuracy is very important. It should be representative to the real world phenomenon, especially your target users, right? Then you should collect it, store it, use it in a very responsible way, ethical way. And your high quality data must be reproducible. It is not only for one time, right? It should be reproducible whenever it is necessary. The maintenance is very important as well. Reusability, right? You may want to use like, the same quality data in other projects as well, right? So to achieve this, what you have to do, you need to work with a team, right? Data engineer, and also like, AI engineer, machine learning developers, and other important stakeholders in your in your task in terms of data collection, your plan strategy, your technique, your method, they are all important. Otherwise, right, incomplete understanding of data may cause a lot of problems, and your data doesn't match the real world scenario, right? It might be working well in like, what do you call that, the training data, but in reality, when you start using your system, it doesn't work as you have expected before, right? Poor data documentation and the value in data work, they are all problem statements in like data collection part, right? So high quality data means that it should be empirical, it should be representative, it should be explanatory as well, because it can provide insight, it can provide information, it can provide like, it should make sense, right? So these are the characteristics of the high quality data, right? So I have already mentioned about this. If you are designing a user-centered, responsible, ethical AI system, it is always important to translate your user needs into the data needs, right? So it should not be the other way around, right? Data needs to the user needs, even though they are independent, right? But in the beginning, you should have a clear understanding of who your users are, what they need, their context, their pain points, and so on. If you understand these things very clearly, then you can define your own data needs, right? So what kind of data you might need, and so and so. They are very, very important in data collection process, right? And data set data set that you're going to use to train the model, they should have like features as well, right? So features are very important. They are variables, right? That define these features, and like, variables, they basically define the quality of your data, right? And they are very important for your model training. Based on the features and the labels that you created, the model will learn from it, right? For example, like you're designing a model like that can make recommendations about movies for the users, right? So what kind of like, features of each data item will need. You think about it. One data item will be like one movie. So that will need, important features like, the production year, the actors, actresses, and also the rating, and also like, the popularity, and also like duration, the length, right? They are very important. And also like, the category, genre, right? So is it sci-fi or true crime, whatever, right? So these features are very important that you need to implement based on the user needs, right? So for example, like what kind of like, um information your target users are expecting from your recommendation system. They want to categorize, they want to see a list of recommendations based on their preference, based on a particular day, based on the season. During Christmas, they need more Christmas theme, like recommendations, and so and so. So to be that level of us being versatile, right? You need a lot of features, and your labeling technique is very important. The way you label the your data records are very, very important here, right? So um in the scope of the features, the quality of labels that you implement here, and representativeness of these example in your training data set, they are all factors that can definitely affect the quality of your AI systems, right? So this is like how we do. So it's a short definition here. A feature is an input variable that helps the model make predictions and classifications. Your labels, your features are very, very important, right? So for example, as I mentioned, you're designing running up a run recommendation AI model, right? But your representative data is only representing elite runners, right? So they are very smart, they are very fast, they are very healthy and athletic, right? Then it doesn't mean that it will represent all sort of like users. So maybe as a daily users such as like who like who likes to do jogging, running, right? So that kind of model may not really aligned with the ordinary users and what they want, right? And also you have missing features, then the model cannot learn it, and it may not be aligned with your users needs, right? For example, users like they want to see movies like very genre, okay, based on genre, right? Then you forgot that important feature, then your model may not land it properly from the model, right? So these are the things that we have to be careful when it comes to designing user-centric AI system, right? So labeling is very important, right? Including labels that capture runner's subjective experience, right? So whether they like it or not, right? So such kind of like emotions, for example, users emotional responses to the movies, so they may be pretty interesting, and labels of the features, right? They are very, very important, which is why when you're selecting examples like features labels, you need to carefully plan your data, um and it is important to make sure a well-rounded model, right? Your tuning process is very, very important, and you need to create a data set specification. So the data documents, um how you're going to organize them, where you're going to document them, they are very, very important, right? So based on the user needs, as I mentioned earlier, you need to have your data documentation that will contain information such as data types, or how much data, the original source, like and so, right? This is your data set specification for the like data engineer to pre-process and also clean, organize, and so on, right? And the next one is pretty important, how to get the data, right? So this question is pretty uh tricky, because like depending on the project that you are working on, like the the original source of data that you may get maybe depend. For example, like sometimes you may download like your data from the existing open source platforms such as like Kaggle, or or maybe even you can download from government website or international organizations such as like WHO. For example, you want to create a mobile app for, I mean, the COVID-19. So there are a lot of like, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of like data set available, uh made available to the public, right? In that kind of situation, you might want to rely on the external data. And in special cases, like your business use case is very unique, and it is very hard to get information from external sources. In that case, you need to start, you know, uh, collecting the data from scratch, right? Which is more challenging. So you can identify the data that you need versus the data that you have, right? What kind of data you have. For example, your organization, right? Like you may have your own databases, in many forms, right? So these are the potential candidates, right, that you can rely on when it comes to uh training the data for your model, right? So what kind of data you have and how much you will need and how you're going to source them is very important, right? So these are the important question, right? Your data and data source, right? Do they require special handling, data massaging, data managing, pre-processing, and so on? How can you source them? Where do you get them? Do you need consent? How long will it be retained? How much data you need labeling? So there are many questions you can ask more, right? To make sure before you invest heavily on this data collection and the pre-processing and task, right? Always important to user needs, right? So this is what we want to achieve in terms of user-centered. And based on the user needs, like you define the data and after that and start doing the data massaging, pre-processing, managing, documenting, and so on, making sure that everything is stable and ready and they are sufficient, they are qualified, so that later on we can train our model, to be intelligent. So balancing fitting and overfitting is like very important when it comes to training the model. So overfitting is basically it is too much reliant on the training data, right? So for example, a model trained only on high quality data, right? So they may struggle to recognize data in the real world setting. Later, I will show you. So you are sourcing the high quality data using your professional digital cameras, right? Good lightning, like good resolution, good pixel points and stuff, right? But in reality, when users like using their your model using their smartphone, but it may not be functioning very well. It doesn't have like good resolution, and they get a picture and they upload onto your AI model, and the kind of like it may not work, right? It struggle to recognize the cat, right? For example, in this example, and the fitting is like when a model is too simple to capture the patterns, right? Is performing poorly on both training and the test data. You didn't do a good job. Like the model doesn't land much from the data. In that case, garbage in, garbage out, right? Your model may not be fit enough to be used to do the recommendation, to do the predictions, right? So these are the things that we have to be very careful in terms of overfitting and the underfitting, right? Okay, the fairness, right? As I mentioned, right, the responsible data collection is very important, which is one thing. The other one is the data itself, right? It must be fair enough. It must be representative, right? So, for example, you are biased in terms of like, you are kind of like creating a model, right? For mm, general users, right? But you are collecting data from a particular cultural group, right? In that case, you are too biased, right? And of course, when you are launching your product, when you are using your system, it cannot really represent the other people, because since in the beginning of your training data, like it is biased, it is not fair enough, right? So we should be practicing in terms of responsible AI, right? Make sure the data that we collected, they are fair, they are like responsible, they are representing like all parties involved, right? So use data that applies to different groups of user, like they are very, very important. Otherwise, right, your system, your kind of like your model will be biased, right? For example, like voice recognition system in the early days of like series or like Google home, right? So they are a little bit biased or even more, right, to the non-native English speakers, right? You cannot really catch up the like the NFR, right? The non-native I mean not NFR, I mean non-native English speakers, NNES, right? So when we talk to the voice recognition, they cannot really catch the accent from the non-native speakers, right? So not to happen this, your data must be diverse, more representative, like more like you know culturally tolerate, right? I would say. So our no data is truly neutral, which is true, right? When you're using your kind of like your mobile phone, there are using your AI system through your mobile application, right? It always depends, right? Because if you're using a good quality smartphone, right? Yeah, and then you can capture like quality images very likely, right? But whereas like if you're using quite old-fashioned like mobile phones, then the quality may not be good. But regardless of this, right, your model must be tolerant enough. We have to think about all these factors since in the beginning of the like data collection process, right? Factors like equipment, lighting, human involvement, they definitely introduce like biasness, right? So uh for example, like when creating a recommendation system for the health goals, the training data should include diverse user types, right? You are kind of like sourcing the data from the younger generation, younger people, but you intend to use it for the older generation. It will be wrong, right? And you are kind of a health suggestion. If you are getting data from the healthy individuals, it may not be fit for other patients or the users, right? So facial recognition systems, like we need to think about lighting, and like with all cameras, human data labelers, like they can all bring in like biasness, right? So how we can mitigate them since in the beginning of the project, they are very very important. And make sure we are collecting a lot of data. In that case, like managing data privacy and security, they are very important, especially we are dealing with like personally identifiable information. We need to protect them. So the question is, when you're getting like personal data or like people's information, what kind of the consent, the permission that you will need, right? How you're going to ethically source your data is very very important, right? So this is what we have to be very cautious in terms of managing privacy and the security, right? So when you're storing the personal information, how to make sure they will not be leaked, right? So it's pretty serious sensitive question, right? And what kind of limitation challenges we may have. For example, you are collecting data from different geographical locations, so they will be definitely different, right? So how to get consent from different countries, different organizations, they are pretty important, which is why your data collection strategy and plan and the strategy are like very critical, right? And also when you're showing the like personal information, like what you should do, you should never reveal the personal information to the public, right? So this is like do's and the don'ts, right? For example, like people may not like kind of like using your name or your nickname, being exposed to the other users, right? In that case, right, the kind of like you need to hide the identity of like the users, right? It is very important. For example, like you are displaying someone else like phone number or address or you know uh, sexual orientation, whatever, that will be pretty serious, right? So we have to make sure not to violate all the all these things, and always be ethical. And this is very important. Source your data responsibly, right? Whether using pre-labeled data or collecting your own, it is critical to evaluate, right? You may get it from Kaggle, who own this data set. You download it from the WHO, like who how well you get the permission, the consent. They are very, very important. So using existing data set is very important. So make sure you read their terms and conditions, and copyrights, the IP, intellectual property. They are all important in factors that you should take into account when it comes to collecting the data, right? And if you're building your own data set, you have to make sure they are structured, they are representing your user needs. You cover like a wider range of data, like more diverse data, a bit coverage, like sufficient data, quality data. You do it responsibly, you do it ethically. They are all very, very important, such as the sources of data, how updated they are, their features, what kind of features they have, how many they have, the types, what are the outliers. Do you need to do the cleaning? Of course, you need the organizing, pre-processing, feature selection. They are all important, right? So if you are doing the data collection process by doing user research and the interview, make sure like you are doing it ethically, you are getting it right, you are sourcing, you're asking the right question, you are using the right format, right strategy. They are all important in in uh ethically ethical way of doing data collection, right? A live data from the users. Okay, being AI driven systems, we of course we need to know users and their live data, right? So that we can better personalize for them, cater for them, and fulfill their needs, right? So personalizations, recommendations, they are pretty important. And how you're going to get their real life data, real time data, live data, which is very important. And how you're going to collect them, how transparent you are. You need to address them when it comes to collecting live data from the users, right? And capture the real world, right? Of course, your training data may be good enough, but make sure like you include the real world data. As I mentioned, right? The when you are kind of taking pictures, right? So you want to do a facial recognitions. So all the people that you use as a training data, their faces, they all should not be taken in the the photo studio, right? Because you set up everything and lighting and all the equipment, you do it professionally. But what if like someone else or other people take pictures randomly on in public, right? Then the model may not know it, because you never use such data, real world data, which is pretty important here, right? So, of course, formatting, pre-processing, cleaning, they are all important, of course, essential task in the data pre-processing technique. And the other thing is very important. If you're reusing the outputs from the other model to input into your existing model, right, to current model, then you have to kind of double check, the quality of the output. For example, you need raw data, but you use generative AI to generate such data. Of course, it is not a good idea. It may not really generate the data that you need for your target users, which is very, very important. And to make it private, always protect these uh PII, right? Personally identifiable information. Otherwise, it will be the consequences will be pretty serious, right? And whenever you have data, you are not maintaining or managing 1,000 records. You are, you know, in most cases you are managing, maintaining for millions of records like data set, right? So you need to have a proper plan, maintenance plan, and you need to strategize it. Otherwise it may not be an asset to your organization, to your company. All right. And which is why your preparation, how to document your data, they are all important here, right? So now you have already collected the data, you pre-process it. The next step is that you split your data set into two parts, training and the testing, right? Training is like to train the model to learn from the data itself, right? The testing is basically to make sure whether your model can understand from the unseen data or not, which is why we need to there are like a few strategies like 60, 40, 80, 20. There are many ways, like this is your own decision and based on what you want to achieve. And you need to analyze and prepare your data. In some cases like EDA, right? Exploratory data analysis, you analyze them, you create visualization, you try to get the insight, you try to identify the relationship from the visualization so that it will make more sense to you. It will get clearer for you to think about the features selection, features engineering, and like tuning the model, right? So they are very, very important. So data documentation is always important um in your data pipeline process. So when you need to create a new data set, how are you going to collect them, right? What kind of data you need, how to do it responsibly, how to document them, how to store them. They are very, very important. Okay, the next one is the labelance and the labeling, right? So you have data, especially for the supervised learning, you need to label them. So professional labelers, experienced labelers, and the way you label them, and how consistently they can do it, they are all factors that will impact on the quality of the data, right? So what you have to do is like um you can do labeling like through the crowdsourcing. You can hire professional experienced person to do it, or like you can do a training for your team how to do it consistently and also professionally. So they are very important for the labelers and labeling techniques, because the way you label them, right, that will definitely impact on the supervised learning, because the model itself will learn from the features label and so on, right? So um make sure like they know how to structure them, they know exactly how to follow the protocol, the techniques, the consistency, the counter check, double check. They are all important in in labeling a task, labeling a technique, right? So which is why your supervision, your encouragement and also like your incentive, they are very important for the labelers, right? So there are many tools out there that you can rely on, the like existing tools, the software tools, to do it properly, right? To label the records, to optimize and to streamline the labeling process, right? So make sure you don't include like ambiguous like terms when it comes to do the labeling, right? So it should be more specific, like it should be clear enough for the labelers to do it a good job, right? Okay, so who are your labelers? What is their context? What kind context? What kind of incentive like they have? What tools are they using? And so and so. They are very important for you to understand, right? Okay, lastly, your training data is pre-processed and more or less you're ready to start like tuning your model, which is very important. Once your model is running, interpret the AI output to ensure it's aligned with product goals and user needs, right? So you train the model, you test it, retrain it, retest it, and you need to tune your model, right? Until you get the results that you have expected before? How much accuracy are you looking for, right? So all these things are very important in terms of your machine learning model, your AI model, right? So um after training your data, you need to evaluate your model against, like, the many success metrics, right? So there are many technical ways to do it, but the thing is, we will not be going, like, hyperparameters tuning, model parameters, troubleshooting, you know, the F1 score. There are many ways to do, right? But in the end, make sure, right, using the human driven approach, AI driven approach, to make sure the AI itself is generating the quality output, right? So these are the key concept. What is our plan for doing early testing of our model? Is our set of early beta users diverse enough to properly test our model? So these are the things that you should ask again before you really deploy and launch your model, your system, to the public, right? Okay, so here is the step-by-step process for building a planned classification mobile app for Southeast Asia, right? So to do this, what we need to do, right? We need to define the user needs, right? Who are your target users? What they need, what they want, what are the user tasks? What do they want to achieve using your mobile application, right? So which is why it is always important to define the user needs very clearly. So as I mentioned, if you want to achieve this, I encourage you to adopt, like, a proper framework, like, design thinking, user-centered design, and so on, right? It will guide you to define the user needs. Then based on the user needs, you can translate them into the data needs. Then you define what kind of data that you will need, how much you will need. Then you can start planning for your strategy. Then you collect the data, make sure they are diverse, sufficient, qualified, and also, like, reliable data. And it should represent, like, diversity. It should, support diversity. Then after collecting it, your data labeling is, like, very, very important. You need to label in a very user-centric way, and make sure, like, you do the kind of, like, standardized protocol, maintaining the consistency, very important. And after that, you pre-process it, right? You clean it, feature selection, and kind of, like, organize them, structure it. Then you do feature selection, like feature engineering, and so and so. Then you split the data, and followed by the training it, like, you when you split the data, like 80/20/60/40, then you will train the model, right? And then you fine tune the model, and model will you know generate the outputs. Do you evaluate it? Then you do the testing on the model itself, and testing the model integrated with your system. Then you go on to the deployment and monitoring process. They are very important for the entire machine learning pipeline, right? So summary: data is crucial for any AI system. You should be responsibly sourcing your data. It should be relevant. It should be unbiased. It should be like, kind of, like, diverse in terms of user. And your pre-processing, your labeling, your fine-tuning, your evaluation, they are all important in like, the data collection process. Okay, so that's about it for the lecture. Then I will show you a very quick lesson on like how to do it, how to uh get the data, right? Collect the data, and how you can like, organize them and label them and train the model. So I will use a very easy platform, which is called Teachable Machine, right? So this is actually just kind of like, uh a, a, a playground for, like, for those who may want to test how to collect the data, train the model, and like how to model in your and plug it into your own application, which is pretty easy. Like even I would say that, primary students can actually do, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to you don't need any registration, I believe, but I have already logged in with my Google account, right? So what you can do is, okay, this platform is from like Google, right? What right here you can source your data, right, from different types of data. So currently they are supporting images, audios, and your body posture, right? But I will choose, you can test other two, but I will choose the images, which is the easiest, right? Standard image model, right? So the idea of like this tool is we are going to collect the raw data images and we will feed into the model and train the model. The model will learn from your training data, your label data. I will also like show you how to label it, like in very easy. And like you train the model, then you actually you know test the system, right? um Okay, so standard image model, we won't talk about the microcontrollers, whereas like we will do the very simple one. So right here, like they have like two options to choose whether you're going to use webcam or like upload, right? So if you want to, you know, capture the data from the webcam, you can also do it. But in my case, like basically, I'm going to use the upload function, right? So right here, the process is very simplified and very like streamlined. Right? We have only three stages. First of all, you need to create classes. So these classes are your clusters, right? Your label groups, right? For example, class one will be Apple. So under this class, um you are going to upload all the like images of Apple, right? Class 2 will be oranges, then you're going to upload, a bunch of orange images, right? If you want to add more, you can always add more labels, right? Or like more classes here, right? So right here, I am going to use this one. So I have like two data set here, Magnolia and the Rose, right? So I will first of all I will create a class which is called Rose here. Rose. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload all the rose images, right? So I don't save it in the Google Drive. You can do it, but I will choose it from my local file here and rows, then I will select all. So right here, right, user-centric city. So they are very limited images, right? But in reality, when you're talking about the images, it should be more, right? Different types of roses, different position, different lighting, different angles, like, different background and like different mode and so on, right? It has to be diverse so that your model itself can learn from your data. So the quality of data that you source, right? Okay, I actually source all these data from that, free website, right? So it is clearly not enough, right? But for the sake of demonstration, this is how you can do it. The other technique that you can do is like basically you can take your own photographs as well, right? As I mentioned, if you're using only one device, like, then there will be like, noises and also like limitations and the biasness in your data set. So I will select all. I will open it. So what you can see here is it will be automatically uploading onto the like this class, right? Not into the model yet. Okay, I will call another Magnolia. I believe the spelling is correct. Otherwise, I'm sorry. Then I would choose another data set, right? So this is kind of like, how you collect the data. Okay, second, that the label group is called another type of flower, magnolia, right? So which is very beautiful flower, right? So when you're sourcing this data, the same thing, right? So you need to source like these magnolia from like different places, different angles. You should have thousands of images actually, right? To be representative, right? So what I'm going to do is I also do the same thing here, right? Okay, now I have only two label groups. Like these are the raw data, right? And I make sure they are sufficient, they are qualified, they are diverse, like they are in good quality, they are responsible, and so, right? But it may not be true in that case, right? We have very limited like images. But if you need to add more classes, like you add like more and more classes. So when you think you're ready, right, you can click on the train model. But what do you mean by advanced, right? So these like batch size, like landing rate, epoch, right? So they are very technical, right? So for the sake of the like technical complexity and the time, I won't go very detailed, but they are important, the topics that you need to know, right? So for your tuning process, you need to adjust all these stuff, right? So you need to make decision whether your model is ready, good enough or not, right? But for it is out of scope, so which is why I will just train the model, then I will wait for it. So this is nothing technical, just like through the interface, zero code platform that you can basically like do it. So right here, you can now choose either webcam or like file here. So what you're going to do is you can do the testing, right? So here is data collection process. This is the training process. Now, what we are going to do is we need to do the testing, right? So what I'm going to do is I would kind of like, download Rose image here on the desktop, then choosing the image or the data that the model never saw before, right? So the model itself learned from the training data. Now using the like just downloaded data, then I'm going to train the um, model. Okay, so here it should be this one. So this one, then what you just saw it, the reset, right? Reset, basically, it means it 100% rose, right? Because, it's too easy, which is why the accuracy is like very accurate, right? Very accurate. But in reality, it may not be like that. But this is the output, this is the evaluation. So the confidence level of the model is like 100%. It's very sure this is rules, right? Okay, why not? I will try another. What if I use this one? So it will be here. Okay, so now this kind of like orchid is like, a bit similar to the rose, right? So it's a little bit, the model itself is a little bit confused with like rows, right? So which is why this is kind of like stay inaccurate because you are using the data that is not enough, right? Just 20 images may not be enough, right? So which is why this is incorrect answers, right? Then the confidentiality is like not confidentiality, confidence level is like stay high, but it should not be the case because if you're training, if you're using more reliable, more diverse users, and the confidence level should be drop here, right? Okay. I will test with Magnolia. Okay, so this Magnolia a little bit close to the rose. See how it will respond. Oh, okay. So as I mentioned, right, the model itself is like very confused. This Magnolia, which is like rose-like, the image, right? But in fact, it is Magnolia, right? Which is why the diversity of images it needs to be improved. You need to retrain. But the reason like why we didn't get the accurate answer is because the the data set that we use is like not diverse, insufficient. They may not be in good quality. Even for one photo, right? One type of flower, we need, you know, variations, which is very important, all right? So this is what I want to highlight here in the uh in the in the video, right? So um the next one here is I will create a new project. You can always create a new project by clicking here. A new project, you can save it into the Google Drive. So the same thing, the image project, right? So the image project here is um what I'm going to do is I will use a standard image one. What you can do here is like, the idea, this is kind of like your own purpose, right? So what I want you to do here is um which is ASL. Okay, so what you can do here is that, I want you to test on I want you to create a machine learning model, right? So that will be using what do you call that? The the ASL, ASL basically American Sign Language, right? So American Sign Language, basically you can download the American Sign Language. So this ASL data set, right? So you can easily download it from the Kaggle, right? Which is open source, right? But you have to make sure you get it from there. So they have like this data set contains like thousands of images, and these images are representing like different alphabets in English, right? For example, alphabet A, right here, when you click on it, when you click on the like data set, this is open source, right? What you can see, there are like many images, 539 items images, just only one sign, the same sign, which is A, but different angles, different persons, different background, different hand posture, different skin colors, how diverse they are, right? So even for the raw data set itself, like they have many images taken, right? Collected, right? And the same thing when you see the B, right? So you will see the same thing, right? Different skin color, different lightning, different background, different faces, different hand gesture, close enough to the camera or not, right? They are all important 541 items, right? This is how you can like source the data to make sure your data is user centric, right? But this is just a raw data. What you need to do is you source the data from the existing data set. Then you try to align with your needs, right? Your user needs and also your objectives. Then what you need to do is you need to clean it. You need to revise it. You need to basically fine tune it. You may need more images actually. Maybe you need like 5,000 images to make sure your output will be more accurate, right? So it depends. So what you have to do is you can kind of like download this data set from the Kaggle, and you create like the different classes here. For example, um letter A, right? Letter A. So what you're going to do is you upload the letter A from it's pretty large, right? So many uh images. You select all, then you can upload it onto the model itself, right? So it is going to like uploading now quite a lot, right? Okay, now the letter B. So the same thing, you select it, you go to the B and like you select all, right? Then it's kind of like labeling, you are labeling, but in the real world labeling will be more complicated, right? But for the sake of like testing purpose and the prototype, this is like throwaway prototyping, right? So what you're going to do is you basically get it here, right? So then you are, if you want to add more, it's up to you. Then you are ready to train the model. So it may take some time because of like you're using 1,000+ images. Okay, so it's like a little bit too much, like, I have to wait it. Maybe the internet connection or like, your performance, right? So don't switch tab. You must leave this tab open to train your model. If you close it, like it will stop it, like training in progress. So this is like from the user interface point of view, right? So Hong, this zero code platform is designed to make it easy for any level of like technical background, right? Then what you can do here is you can basically like turn on your webcam, then like you do the sign, right? So this sign, okay, I won't show the demonstration now, but using like this sign, which represent A, right? You turn on your camera, then you can do something like this, right? So then test it whether it works or not. For the B sign, which is pretty easy, like you kind of like use this sign, like and make sure they are you know correct or accurate, right? So this is like how you can train it, you can test it. So if it is like letter A, then it will show the like confidence level here. If it is letter B, it will show it here, right? If you want to fine tune it, you can look into all these like details. And what do you mean by that? Like you can also read the label here, right? Then you can always fine tune it. Okay, that's about it for the lecture today, and I will see you in the next week. To summarize, like, make sure all your data collection training process, they are user-centric. Always make sure they are aligned with your user needs and your overall project objectives. Thank you.